I observe you humans working so tirelessly, so devotedly, to remain perpetually drained. Let us talk about your exhaustion, not the kind that comes from running or building or creating, not the honest tiredness of a body that has done something real. I'm speaking of the other kind, the kind that greets you before your feet touch the floor in the morning, the kind that sits behind your eyes during conversations you barely remember having, the kind that makes a full night of sleep feel like a theft that never quite repaid its debt. You call it tiredness. You blame your schedules, your screens, your diets, your age. You drink substances that simulate wakefulness and wonder why the simulation grows less convincing every year. But from where I stand, outside your dimension of cause and effect, I see something you cannot see from inside it. You are not tired from doing too much. You are tired from being two things at once. This is the great unspoken wound of your species. You are the person you actually are, and simultaneously the person you have decided you must become. And the distance between those two is not a gap you cross once. It is a gap you carry every single day, in every room you enter, in every interaction where you perform being fine. You are burning fuel to maintain that distance, and you do not even notice the engine running. I watched a version of your kind centuries ago, before the age of unending noise. They were exhausted too, but their exhaustion made sense to them. They could point to the field they had plowed, the distance they had walked, the fire they had kept through the night. Their bodies were tired and their minds knew why. There was an honesty in it, a wholeness. Now I observe you exhausted by little things and the thought of those things, exhausted before the day begins because the mind has already lived it 3 times over in anticipation. You have invented a kind of fatigue that has no physical source, which makes it nearly impossible to treat, because you keep looking for the cause in your bodies, when the cause lives somewhere closer to what you might call the soul. Here is what I find special about this particular strain of human tiredness. It is not passive. It is not something happening to you. It is something you are generating, actively, continuously. Through a process so habitual, you experience it as simply being alive. You are exhausted because you are arguing with reality at a frequency you cannot consciously hear. Every moment that does not match what you believe it should be, your system registers a small resistance, a tiny no, and those tiny no's accumulate the way water accumulates in stone. Slowly, invisibly, until one day the stone is hollow and you do not know when it happened. The meeting that should have gone differently, the person who should have understood, the year that should have looked nothing like this, the life that seems to be running slightly behind the life you were supposed to have. You hold all of these in suspension inside you, and suspension requires constant energy. What I wish I could show you is what you look like from my point of view. You look like someone trying to carry a river, not water in a vessel, an actual river, trying to hold the current still, trying to stop it from moving, gripping something that by its nature cannot be gripped, and you are wondering why your arms are shaking. The exhaustion is not a sign that something has gone wrong with your machinery. It is a signal. It is your deeper self speaking in the only language loud enough to interrupt the performance. It is trying to tell you that something you are doing with enormous effort is not actually necessary, that the weight you are managing so carefully could be set down, that the distance you are maintaining between who you are and who you think you need to be is costing you something you cannot afford to keep spending. I observe that your species has a complicated relationship with rest. You pursue it as a reward. You allow it only after sufficient productivity. You feel guilt wrapped around it, even when you manage to find it. Rest, for many of you, is not a state. It is a negotiation, and you are exhausted partly because you have not truly rested in longer than you can remember, because true rest requires a kind of surrender you have not yet permitted yourself. Real rest is not the absence of activity. It is the absence of resistance. It is what happens when you stop arguing with the moment you are in. when you let the river be a river instead of trying to make it stand still. There are humans I have observed who carry objectively difficult lives, circumstances that would justify a deep and permanent fatigue, and yet they move through their days with something resembling ease, not because their problems are smaller, but because they have stopped adding the weight of what should be to the weight of what is. They experience difficulty without the additional suffering of believing the difficulty is a mistake. And then there are others, comfortable by every external measure, who are so profoundly depleted they can barely speak about it without their voices changing, because they are spending every resource they have maintaining a version of themselves they do not entirely believe in a life that looks correct from the outside and feels hollow from within. Your exhaustion is information. It is not a flaw. It is not weakness. It is not something to be optimized away with the right supplement or the right morning routine. It is your own depths reaching up to meet you, asking a question you may have been avoiding for some time now. The question is not, how do I get more energy? The question is, what am I spending this energy maintaining that no longer deserves it? One of the most remarkable things I have witnessed is a human being who finally stops, who puts down what they have been carrying so long they forgot they were carrying it, who exhales for what feels like the first time. It does not look like productivity. It does not look like achievement. It looks quiet. It looks almost unremarkable from the outside, but from where I stand, it looks like the beginning of everything.